The Montreal Canadiens have not beaten the Los Angeles Kings in 6 years. I'm going to tell you why this year might be their best shot to end that streak today on Locked On Canadiens.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into another episode of Locked On Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as that Maybe It's Ian, and I'm joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba, also known as the Actor Stick, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Laura, we're going to jump right into this, I think. There's a busy week ahead for the Montreal Canadiens. They've got 3 games on the schedule. Let's get the prediction out of the way now, because we've been pretty good about this. We keep saying 4 out of 6. By the end of the week, Canadiens have 4 out of 6. Is this a 4 out of 6 week, Laura? They've got LA on Tuesday, Dallas Thursday, Boston Saturday. You say?
Yes, I say it is a 4 out of 6 week, and it's going to surprise us which game/games they do win.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. Every game is really interesting for a bunch of different reasons. And let's start where we should at the beginning. They play LA on Tuesday, all home games for Montreal. They don't have a lot of home stands this season, but they're in the month of November so far. They will have spent a long time at home. They need to capitalize on that. The LA Kings come to town 7-5-4 for 18 points, 9th in the West. However, I feel it's important to note that there's 1 point that separates 5th from 12th in the Western Conference. So the positioning doesn't really matter so much. They're all kind of jockeying for space out there. Last year, Montreal got swept by the Kings, 4-1 loss and a 6-3 loss. The Canadiens have not beaten the LA Kings in 6 years. November 9th, 2019. Shea Weber scored twice. Carey Price got the win. They are 0-7-1 against the Kings since then. Why do you think that is, Laura?
I think because the Kings were just further ahead in their rebuild. They became a good team much faster than the Montreal Canadiens did, right? That one season that they might have had the potential to beat them in a game, it was when they were only playing Canadian teams, right? In that COVID season. So I do think that this is a different Montreal Canadiens team, and LA and Dallas to me are teams that they would look at like challenges. I would be way more nervous about that Boston game than I am about the first 2 games, because I do think the Canadiens are going to bring their A game against the Kings against Dallas.
Yeah. I definitely want to get to that Bruins game later, because I'm very excited for it. Some stats for your LA Kings: 25th in goals for per game at 2.75, 20th in goals against per game at 3 even, 20th in power play at 17.7, and 22nd in penalty kill, 76.3. They are 9th in shots per game played, 29.3. For record, the Canadiens are 31st at 24.9. That shot stat tells me this is a slam Sam Montembeault start. Yeah. There's no thought that goes into this. It's Sam's game, because if they're going to shoot a lot, that's the guy I want in net.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is going to be another test for him, right? Like, is he going to be able to withstand that beginning? It would be nice if he gets through like the first 5 minutes without letting a goal in. But let's just start with like having a good game overall. Let's just start with an average good game,
Yeah, he doesn't need. The Canadiens are playing well enough where he doesn't need to steal a game. He just has to not lose it. I think that's what's been most frustrating about, his start to the season so far. Adrian Kempe, 17 points, is over a point per game, or at a point per game for LA so far this season. Darcy Kemper had a great season last year, bouncing back in net. But he's sort of come back down a little bit, 905 and a 252. The one thing I really focused in on was the LA Kings have played in as many overtime games this season as the Montreal Canadiens have. They've played in 7. So if you are so inclined, I would imagine that there's going to be an overtime in this game. It just seems like if both these teams are playing to go to overtime, they're going to make it there. Who are you looking for to stand out in that one against the Kings?
I really think that this is going to be a time for the bottom 6 to really step up.
Yeah. I mean, and against Yoel Armia comes back to the Bell Center for the first time. Show him, not so much we don't need you, but also like he was a big part of that bottom 6.
Yeah, which is not just. Go ahead. Sorry, go on.
I was just gonna say, like, just to show like that you can that bottom six can work, right? We're going to
Yeah.
talk about fourth line options potentially in Laval in our second segment, but like for now, this is what they're rolling with, and there's no reason that line shouldn't be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not to say that the first two lines aren't important, but I think like from the guys that we're wanting and expecting to be good, like offensively, we're seeing that, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing like Kirby Duck, we've praised him. Ivan Demidov is just like a cheat code, right? That top line is clicking, everything's going well there, you know, like with Kapanen and all of that. Like I really want for myself, I want that bottom six to really make a difference in this game just because I think that the difference between winning and losing is whether that bottom six can support what the top six can bring.
Yeah, totally agreed. All right, let's move on. The Guy Carbonneau Bowl comes to town. It's the Dallas Stars on the way to Montreal. 9-4-3 this year for 21 points. That's good enough for third in the Western Conference. Montreal went 1-0-1 against Dallas last year. They played them twice in 6 days. It was kind of what happened with Seattle this year, where they just played them a whole bunch, got it out of the way, didn't see him again. Montreal had a 2-1 shootout loss and a 3-1 win. Road teams won both of those games. Dallas finds themselves middle of the pack in most stats. 19th in goals for per game, 17th in goals against, 26th in penalty kill. However, third in the league on the power play, 32.8%. That is a deadly power play. And with the two guys I'm about to say, Mikko Rantanen and Wyatt Johnston, it's no secret why they're great. Mikko Rantanen in 16 games has 21 points. Wyatt Johnston has 10 goals and 10 assists for 20 points in as many games. Jake Ottinger, though, supposedly a very strong goaltender, off to a not so great start this year, an 893 and a 299. What are you looking at in this Dallas game?
You have to capitalize on mistakes. I think this is going to be the toughest test for the Canadiens in a long time. And for me, like this is a team that every year we talk about, we expect them to get to the Stanley Cup final. I know they don't always do it. I know sometimes we pick them to win the cup and they don't, but they have that potential, right? Like it's been a few years where that's a team that I find scary. So the Montreal Canadiens are going to have to, one, weather the storm, which we know that they're capable of doing, especially if Dallas comes out swinging at the beginning. But also, like, just, we talked about it the other day, like play with urgency, and you have to capitalize on mistakes. Like, I think that's like going to be the key there.
Yeah, I think special teams are going to loom large in this one with how good both of these teams' power plays are and how bad Dallas's penalty kill is. And the Canadiens is, middle of the pack. It's not an elite unit on their own, but I think special teams are going to loom large in that one.
Yes.
Wouldn't surprise me if the teams traded power play goals in that one against Dallas. All right, the final one. This is the dessert of the week. This is the matchup that you're looking forward to. The beginning of the season, the schedule comes out, you circle this one on the calendar. It's the Boston Bruins coming to town. They are 10-7-0 for 20 points, second in the Atlantic. However, they've played more games than anybody else in the Atlantic. And, if the other teams pick up points in those games played, Boston will find themselves pretty far down. They've won 6 in a row, though, the Boston Bruins have. Montreal, 1 win last year versus Boston in 3 attempts, a 6-4 loss in the Bruins Centennial, which, by the way, over the last two seasons, Montreal has played in 3 Centennial home opener games. Yeah. I think that's really silly that the NHL threw them to the Wolves in all 3 of those, Boston, Detroit, and Chicago.
I don't know. To me, it's like a marquee matchup, right? Like, to me, they're saying like it's the Canadiens. Like the Canadiens are, it's not just the original one. It's who people pay to see. Like, I'm sorry, but nobody is like excited about like a random team coming to town for the Centennial game, right? I do think though that for the old Norris division, you should have had old like Norris rivals. I feel like that's, a Chicago in Detroit or vice versa or Toronto, right? Yeah. I do think that, right? I feel like the Montreal Canadiens are the team that you like get out of your pocket whenever there's a big occasion.
Yeah, I would have started if I was, the NHL. I would have started Detroit, Chicago, home and home. You guys play against each other for your home openers, Centennial games. Would have been really cool. Anyway, we're back to Boston. The home team won every game last season, so Montreal only played once at home. They took that game 4-1. Boston this year, 12th in goals for per game, 24th in goals against, so a very high event hockey team. 12th in power play, 13th in penalty kill. David Pastrnak still going, 17 points in 17 games. Jeremy Swayman, however, an 898 and a 309. I don't ever want to say a game against Boston is a trap game, and I don't really believe in that. But Boston seems gettable. for the first time, like they were last year as well, but again, they seem gettable this year. Not to say that it's a, you put a W on the score on the calendar before they even come to town. But what do the Canadiens need to do in this one to make sure that it isn't a trap game?
Honestly, like I think you have to come out swinging, and you have to play your all 3 periods like you played the third period against the Mammoth.
Yeah, I think that's about right. I think they need to show discipline.
Yeah.
A lot of times in these marquee games, they get a little over their skis. I'm curious to see how they control themselves, and I'm really curious to see how Arber Xhekaj performs in this game, because he's been excellent. He's been excellent at letting the opportunities come to him instead of chasing them down. If he's patient enough in that game against Boston, an opportunity to do something to make some damage is going to find him, and he just needs to be ready for it.
Yeah. I feel like I threw out a lot of cliches this segment.
We all
definitely, yeah.
Marty said he's the head coach. We kind of have to play in the space a little bit. I think that's fair. I said out over their skis. What am I? 100? Anyway, that's our weekly forecast. We do this every week, so check in every Tuesday for your weekly forecast, and then at the end of the week, we do it all over again. We recap the week. So stick with us, Locked On Canadiens. When we come back, we're going to cover some fourth line options that might be in Laval currently, and whether or not any of those guys can actually make the fourth line better. And we'll get into that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting. I feel like I've got a little bit of action on just about every game, and especially when it's my team making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's right, new customers can get $300 in bonus bets when their first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, welcome back. This is Locked On Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. I love being able to say that. We're #1 at something. That's really great. We're not talking about #1 here, though. We're talking about #4, the fourth line for the Montreal Canadiens. We had a question from our mailbag. We're still siphoning through it. You guys always hit up our mailbag, which we love. We do not have the benefit of time a lot of the time. So Boondoggle had, regarding Joe Veleno, isn't there someone in Laval that could use NHL experience and provide the same mid-level of play? Veleno can stay as the 13th forward, and a Laval player can fill the line A void. What are your thoughts here? I think there's two questions at play. I think there's, can somebody come in and fill in on the fourth line, and can somebody replicate the offense that might have come from Patrick Laine? So let's start with the first one, fourth line. The Laval Rocket have guys who could jump on and play against fourth line, right?
Yeah, I think the most obvious answer is obviously going to be Florian Xhekaj. That's the most obvious answer. But you've got Owen Beck. You've got plenty of options there. You can call up a guy that, like, I don't know, like a Kandata or something. But if you really want to improve this hockey game, this hockey team, I think the #1 name on your list has to be Florian Xhekaj. I think there's a third question though at play. Is that, like, what do they do in Laval?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with you. I think Florian Xhekaj plays the way that the Canadiens want their bottom six to play. They want them to be physical. They want them to get in on the forecheck. They want them to be able to chip in offensively, right? The concept of playing Florian Xhekaj next to Jake Evans and Josh Anderson, I like that way more than putting Veleno in that spot. Because Veleno, like, what is Veleno's calling card? I don't know. What is your job? What do you do? You know, if you're playing lower in the lineup, you have to have something that they look at you and go, he does that. Josh Anderson forechecks really well. Jake Evans, great defensively. Joe Veleno, no idea. Like, so I think, like, that's where a guy like Xhekaj has an edge. He has an edge. Like, that's the whole part of his game, is that he plays on the edge. So I completely agree with you there. To your question about, you know, what does this do to the Rocket? I'll throw back another question, which is, do the Canadiens care?
No,
are we at a point now where the Canadiens are more, I think the Canadiens are more invested in the success of the National Hockey League team than they are of the American Hockey League team, which is probably, that probably shifted late last year, but it's really the first full season where that will be the case.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
I absolutely agree with them on that front. I just personally think that there's still some guys there that need that development. There's still some guys there that we aren't going to see maybe this year, but the next couple of years. So for me, I still think it's worth it to have them try to make another run at a long playoff run.
Yeah, I do too. If you're calling a guy up to play on the second line, though, the reason our list is short, it's really Owen Beck, Jared Davidson. I know has had a phenomenal start, and I think can be an NHLer one day. Florian Jacki, maybe Luke Tuck at some point, maybe Lucas Condata, although isn't he the captain? I wouldn't call up the captain.
Yeah.
Just me personally. So there are options there, but you wouldn't want to call up Joshua Waugh to play on the fourth line.
No.
Because what's he giving you as a fourth liner, right? You'd rather have him playing first or second line in Laval. You're not calling up Philip Méchard because he's not playing that fourth line
role. Yeah.
Right. That's what the Canadiens and a lot of teams do this where, if they have a hole in their NHL lineup, they call up a guy who can feasibly fit that role. Right?
Not necessarily the best guy on the team.
Right. So if the Canadiens were to, knock on wood, lose somebody in the middle six, right? Maybe the conversation is a little bit different, right? Maybe if it's somebody, who, is a smaller, faster type forward, maybe that's where you go Sean Farrell or you go Phil Méchard, right? So that you're not making your team all that much smaller just by doing it. You're putting a guy in that role to be able to succeed. Those are guys that I'm not really looking at for call-ups at this point. And plus you really just want to see them develop in Laval. They're different tiers of player right now.
Mm-hmm.
Florian Jacki, I think, while he's still developing, he can be a presence in the National Hockey League very soon.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on the Laval Rocket and calling up anybody? It seems like the defensive conversation is kind of over because Caden Gooley's going to come back.
Yeah.
No reason to bring up anybody else.
Well, I didn't think about I mean, this wasn't part of the question, but I was thinking about waivers too. The Canadiens might not need to call anybody up from Laval if there's a guy that gets placed on waivers. It's just sometimes it's such a crapshoot, right? And
I'm laughing because there was somebody put on waivers on Monday into Tuesday. His name's Michael Pezzetta.
Was he really? Yeah,
he was
I missed
put on
it.
waivers, and I chuckled at the thought because maybe there's no chance the Canadiens are claiming him. I just don't think that that's a reality. But I find it funny that Toronto did the thing that Montreal wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Right. And Montreal wanted him as a 13th forward. It's not like they wanted him to go play in Laval. They wanted a 13th forward so that in the case somebody got sick or hurt in warmups, you could throw Michael Pezzetta in there. So I do find it funny that he's back on waivers, that, that experiment in Toronto, you ask Leaf fans, they thought he was going to be a fixture on the fourth line. And I don't know how you watched him at all last year and came to that conclusion. But yeah, I think waivers are, if somebody were to be made available, the Canadiens would probably be interested if they thought that player could benefit them. The problem is that the Canadiens are good now, so their waiver priority is very low, right?
Yeah.
We're not picking in the Jonathan Kovacevic sweepstakes anymore, where we're the third team in the waiver priority. So it'll be tough to, if anything good with some meat on the bones makes its way to waivers, I'm doubtful they get to the Canadiens.
No, definitely not. But I kind of miss Kovacevic a lot.
Yeah, well, look, he figured it out and he became a fixture in New Jersey. I know there were some challenges last year. He was scratched a couple of times, but look, he got a contract with financial security. I'm rooting for the guy. I have a pro stick from him, like a stick that he actually used. It's taller than me. I'm like 5'11". It's taller than I am. So guy was massive. He'd be incredibly helpful to have on the Canadiens right now, but who would have known? All right, let's leave that there. When we come back, we're going to take a look at how we measure the power play. Right now and forever, it's always just been percentage success over opportunities. But let's try to get creative and think of other ways that the league can measure power play. And we'll get into that in just a second here on Locked On Canadiens. This episode is also brought to you by DripDrop. When I'm hydrated, everything just works better. My focus, energy, mood, even my skin. That's why I've been using DripDrop. It's doctor-developed hydration that keeps me running at full power, no matter what my day looks like. DripDrop isn't your average sports drink. It delivers 3 times the electrolytes and half the sugar of leading brands. Using a science-backed formula trusted by medical professionals, firefighters, and over 90% of top college and pro teams. I like using DripDrop as part of my daily routine. I'll mix in a packet before I go on a walk, before I head off to work. You're just during that midday slump. You get done with lunch. It's like 2 o'clock. You're starting to feel kind of run down. It really is a nice pick-me-up. And it tastes great. My go-to flavor is fruit punch. My wife loves the grape. And it's really become my secret weapon for staying sharp and energized through long days. Right now, DripDrop is offering podcast listeners 20% off your first order. Go to dripdrop.com and use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. That's dripdrop.com, promo code LOCKEDONNHL for 20% off. Stock up now before the heat hits hard and keep your body and mind performing at their best with DripDrop. All right, we are back and we're headed back to the mailbag. We got a question last week regarding how power plays are measured. This comes to us from Hugo Win, which I agree, Hugo should win. Do either of you feel like there is any value in looking at power play percentage differently? I think all power plays should be divided by 2 minutes versus goal. Goal scored. A 10-second power play is not a measure of defensive ability or offensive ability on the kill or the power play. In the same front, a 5-minute major is still considered one power play. So what are your thoughts here? Like, are we kind of in a place where it is, is the way we measure power play outdated given what we've done with statistics since we started measuring this? Laura, you are on mute.
I was trying to look up some stats to kind of do some math on my own, and that's what happened. This is what happens when I do math. That's why you do all the like brain things.
Yeah,
on the
stay
show.
in your lane, Laura.
So I think like the thing is like we do measure to a certain extent, like we measure like like 4v5 or whatever, like with the man advantage, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think that the power play itself has evolved. Like as a concept, it's evolved. Like so the way we do things is different. So I do think that like it's worth it to look at it a different way, because then you can kind of coach a different way, you can defend a different way, and very, very importantly, like you can strategize in a different way, right?
Yeah, I think all of that's true. I also think with the way that since I think back to like the early 2010s, 2012, 2013, that era is where like the war on analytics began, right? Corsica and War on Ice and all those places were really taking off, and everything became a rate stat, right? Everything became a per 60. It's why it's fun to do memes like bits per 60 on this show is through the roof. It's really an homage to that era of being a hockey fan. I wonder if there's an opportunity here to better represent power plays by looking at them by that kind of rate stat, by standardizing your effectiveness on the power play by not necessarily penalizing you for getting too many opportunities where your percentage goes down, but also not penalizing you the other way either, where if you're a team like Montreal who can't seem to buy a power play, that in you don't end up with getting dinged because you're still spending less time on the power play per game.
Right.
So I looked at power play per 60, power play goals per 60. What I found was pretty interesting. The Pittsburgh Penguins have the number one goals for per 60 on the power play at 13.75.
Who would have thought?
It's well, especially considering they have the lowest time on ice per game on the power play at 351. So that's an instance where you look at one and you go, you know what? I wonder if we look at it through the lens of per 60, if we're inflating their number, because for them, they don't have as much time on the power play, and yet their power play is still excellent. So I wonder, like, how to look at that. I don't know, because this is the concept of this to me is brand new. The thought of reshaping the way we look at power play is brand new. However, looking at power play stats, I remember back when the Canadiens were like the Carbonneau era Canadiens. Second mention of Guy Carbonneau on the show, by the way. I can't believe I've done that.
They were so good. That power play was so good.
Do you remember what the percentages were though?
No.
They were like 24%.
Oh, wow.
Remember I told you Dallas's at the beginning of the show? It's over 30%. So like the effectiveness on the power play is much different. So maybe it is about time that we look at different ways of doing this.
Yeah. That's actually kind of crazy. Like I do remember, and I miss those days where the Canadiens, like I just remember it being like Kovalev was on it. I remember just it being like almost like you had so much confidence that they could win games just based on that power play, right?
Yeah. Sheldon Surrey was shooting pucks through guys' sticks and it was going into the net unimpeded. I still cannot believe the howitzer that guy had. And how the second he left Montreal, his body just completely fell apart. Really unfortunate for a guy that I know a lot of Canadiens fans were still rooting for when he left. So I'll give you some other stats here. The Canadiens at power play goals per games played is a little bit different as well. The Canadiens, let's see, where did it go? I just lost it. 1 second. The Canadiens on the power play are 8th in power play goals per games played at 0.8. So you're almost at a goal a game on the power play. It's pretty good. Standard power play percentage, they're 5th in the league at 27.9%. So like there's not too much of a difference on this. I found that also in goals for per 60 on the power play, the Canadiens were 4th in that metric. I believe Dallas was 3rd, and they're 3rd in the other metric as well. So I almost wonder if all of this just comes out in the wash.
Yeah.
Like at the end of the day, like it's just rearranging numbers that ultimately should spit out the same result. That once you get 82 games in and we all have a lot of power play time, it's kind of already just baked in.
It's going to be really funny to like see how it does work out. Like if it's 1-to-1 or not, right?
Yeah, because I mean, maybe there will be teams that just can't buy a power play. Like Montreal has the 7th lowest time on ice per game played on the power play, and that's considering the fact that they had a game where they had 10 power plays, right? So right now that's heavily weighted. I would imagine if things continue for the Canadiens at the rate that they've gone, they'll get closer to 1, as in like the lowest time spent on the power play, because they had that one game where they got a ton of them, and then Jeff Blashill cried about it, and now the Canadiens don't get any power plays. I think this is fascinating, though. I want to keep an eye on this stat throughout the year, and see if our vision of what a good power play looks like changes based on this metric. Like if a team is like outside the top 10 in standard percentage, but they're like 2nd in the league at the end of the year, I wonder what that looks like. Well, I wonder if people will look at that and go, that power play is actually one of the best in the league.
Yeah. I think one of the things that this highlights to me, though, also is like our listeners, just like the way they come up with things and like these kinds of like, I know they're thought exercises, but I really, really enjoy them. I really, really enjoy the way people think, because like that's kind of like we have fun here, but we also like want to look at things a different way.
Yeah, and you never know. Like, nobody looked at shot attempts until somebody started looking at shot attempts.
Right.
There's always a first for doing a lot of these things and pulling a lot of these metrics. I don't know if this one sticks. I do have a suspicion that at the end of the year, all of this stuff comes out in the wash, that we all go, oh yeah, the best power plays are the best power plays, the worst are still the worst. By the way, in doing this, I looked at penalty kill percentage. Do you know who has the best penalty kill in the National Hockey League right now?
Is it going to be like someone that really surprises me?
Yeah, it's the Buffalo Sabres.
I swear I was going to say Buffalo.
I couldn't believe it. I was like, wait a second, that's not, maybe all of these numbers are complete bunk science and we should just go back to pure 5-on-5 and no power plays. Everyone just gets a penalty shot. I think that's how we need to go back to this. All right, let's leave that there. Let's do our trivia and head out of here. Yesterday's question brought to us by our friend, I believe, Jay. Longtime New York Islanders enforcer, played his final NHL games as a Montreal Canadien before winding down his pro career with the Utah Grizzlies of the now defunct International Hockey League. Laura, who is this player?
I don't remember. You told me the answer.
It is Mick Vukota. Mick Vukota is the answer here. I did see someone throw a Mark Streit in there, which I really appreciate. Mark Streit, one of my favorites. I always love to remember that he was the captain of the New York Islanders during some of the most pitiful Islanders teams of the last 20 years. The correct answers on that one come to us from Good Sports, Super Rain, and Garrett S. All right, today's question. We talk a lot about the Habs struggles against Western teams, particularly the California teams, like the Kings that they can't beat, the Sharks that they can't beat. But there is one Western team that Montreal has dominated. Of teams currently in the West, the Habs beat this team the most consecutive times. So what I'm looking for here is the Habs' longest win streak all time versus a Western opponent. So the longest win streak of all time for the Montreal Canadiens against one Western opponent. If you have the answer, put it in the comments down below this video. Send it to us any way you know how, and we'll give you a shout out on the next episode of the show. And that is going to do it for us today on this episode of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you so much for subscribing, making us your first listen of the day, and making us the #1 sports podcast network. Love saying that. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. For your second listen, go check out the Locked On NHL podcast. Locked On NHL Game Night is a must listen if you're a hockey fan. Every night they break down every game. They throw in clips from us, the local hosts. When our team does something great, you'll hear from us. So go check them out. Subscribe on Locked On NHL wherever you get your podcast. You can find the show Locked On Canadiens just about everywhere we're posting things. Bluesky, Instagram, and TikTok primarily. LockedOnCanadiens@gmail.com is our email, the best place to get in contact with us and send your mailbag questions. You can find me at Maybe It's Ian. You can find Laura at The Active Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in. Enjoy the game. We will see you tomorrow night.